Well met. This has been Broad, and you're watching Born to be
Cosmo.
Oh, snap.
Welcome to Born to be Cosmo, the podcast where we talk about all things Marvel Snap. All right, so we're here on the back of what might have been one of the most contentious months of Snap, Loki. Last month introduced Loki, Alioth, and Mobius. Those are cards that people play in games of Marvel Snap. And the release of Elsa was much anticipated and perhaps feared, and has altered the landscape somewhat. And we've got quite a bit to talk about tonight with respect to that, and some upcoming cards in December. Here to help me discuss these topics are famed Marvel Snap content creator and heel ZombiesGoNomNom. Zombies, always a pleasure to have you with us.
And good to be here.
The brains behind this whole outfit and the creator of this new background that we are podcasting with tonight, NateWolf.
Heyo. Nate. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here amongst
It's funny that
company.
You thank me for having you, but you're hosting the pod. Anyways, it doesn't matter. Details. You're very welcome. So, we've been playing Snap for a week. Elsa came out. The full patch came out, and there really wasn't that many significant changes in the patch. I think that one thing that has been firmly established is that game balance is going to be driven primarily through the OTAs, the over-the-air clientless updates, and content and card reworks, which happen very infrequently, will be delivered through the patch. So the patch didn't really bring anything to the game other than some mechanical changes to cards, and which really were kind of on the periphery of relevancy, and then obviously the introduction of Elsa in the season reset. How have you guys been enjoying Snap over the last week?
Well, it turned from Loki Stone to Elsa Stone.
Hey, but she has stone in her name, so like it's kind of fitting.
This is the old Hearthstone joke, right? But like,
yeah,
it's really funny. I actually have seen very little Loki, which is funny, but
amazing.
Who I have seen is a ton of Mobius. So
go figure. I wonder why we're not seeing any Loki.
Yeah, right. It's really interesting, because last month it was like, oh god, Loki's broken, and now I'm not even seeing it. Now I'm not paying for the stats at the moment on like Untapped or whatever, but I imagine that the play rate is much diminished from where it was previously.
Yeah.
Because just from anecdotally speaking, I'm at rank 97 right now, and I have seen almost none of it, which is fine with me 90, because losing to my own cards sucks. But
so between ranks 90 and infinite, so starting from 90 to the top of ladder, Loki is looking approximately about 5% of the meta, down from 20 last month.
Wow. So what's Elsa then is the question, right? Because
I'm sorry, what?
What's Elsa then? Is she taking the Loki spot? I imagine yes.
Yeah, Elsa's at 21%, but Elsa's so we're going to talk a little bit about this, but Elsa's an incredibly flexible card, and so saying like Elsa's at 21% is not a fair representation, because Elsa is integral to move. Elsa sees play in Loki in some cases. Elsa gets played in Hitmonkey decks. So
you can put her in pretty much anything and be like, she's just good, and
so 30,
she's a stat machine. So
yep, 30% thereabouts, which is high. It's like the same as Loki. It's a dominating card, and I think that looking at the meta, it's developed fairly rapidly, and I think there are 4 cards that really define high-level Marvel Snap play right now. And those 4 cards are obviously Elsa, another extremely powerful season pass card that frankly probably puts too many stats onto the board, relative to its cost and trade-off. Mobius, another meta-defining card. Even though you might be seeing less of it, keep in mind that this is what made Loki, not a Loki counter, but made Loki a little bit less dominating, kind of took a little bit of the edge off. Invalidates Wave. Wave kind of dropped off completely because of Mobius.
Quinjet.
Quinjet,
Like all the Loki decks are cutting Quinjet now, which is wild. You would not have seen that last month. It's like this card's. I'm thankful of it because it has cut down the Loki population, but at the same time, the amount of collateral damage it had to cause to cut down the Loki population is really sad because it feels like it's limited. Like so many decks, like Sarah, Negative, Zabu, Stature, like all these cards people liked and played. It's just like, it's like you don't see these cards played anymore. And why? Because Mobius is a 2/3 that goes in almost every deck in the game, and because it's just good. And even when you're not shutting down a deck with it, you're getting a 2-mana 2/3. That is sometimes beneficial with like bad locations, right?
Dude,
or even good locations. Like
I was
Elysium.
so confused over the weekend because the hot location was the raft. So, the first person to get 4 cards in the raft, you get a 6 cost, but it costs 0.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? It doesn't cost 0 if they played Mobius.
Mobius. Mobius, very meta defining. I'll just say it right now. It's probably my least favorite card in all of Marvel Snap, just kind of how it's pushing a lot of things out. And then finally, probably the most contentious out of the 4, I'm going to call them a pair. I know we said 4 cards are defining the meta. I feel like this is like, even though they're 2 cards, it's kind of a single entity, is Alioth and Vision. And the reason that I pair them together is because Alioth is, you said this yesterday, Zombies, feels like the new Shang-Chi. I'll let you explain why after. Vision just goes really well into playing into Alioth. Alioth being difficult to play around. If you're running both, it's like a good kind of counter and proactive play, right? So Vision helps you play against Alioth, and Alioth, well, you want to be playing it because its effect, given the types of decks that are in the meta, because of the limitations placed on them by Mobius, Alioth good.
I think it's the most impactful 6-drop we've ever seen, or at least in a long time. Like
more than Galactus.
Well,
you don't have to answer that.
Yeah, post Galactus, obviously, but like, I really do think it's the most. It's crazy because my big concern with this card when it was coming out was, oh, Loki's just going to steal this, and you're going to be sad because they're going to play it for less. And well, that happened. It didn't happen nearly enough to like push this card out. And this is like the defining 6-drop now. It's like it kind of took that Doom spot.
There's people that are even cutting Chavez to put in Alioth, which is
like,
wow.
That's what I've been doing. So it's like basically like every deck that like I've put together, Safety Blade kind of looks at it and he's like, oh yeah, this looks really good, but I'll make one change. Takes out Chavez, puts in Alioth, and it honestly,
I mean, when I was climbing, right? So my kid did this Pokemon competition over the weekend, and I took him. It was in LA. It was like borderline LA. It was like a 30-minute drive, but like I was there for 6 hours, and like I just played Snap on the iPad the whole time while he was competing. And there were games that like, dude, people are snapping and all this stuff, and like I've got priority in these 2 lanes, and I've got Alioth in hand. Like you can't lose, Yeah. Except the one time I lost to some dork playing Galactus in an empty lane on turn 6, which I did not see coming, right? But like, but it's, the card is crazy. You have to play around it, like, and it's just like Shang-Chi, right? The mantra with Shang-Chi is, do they have it? Like, yes, they always have it, and so you can't. But there's no counter, unless you've got priority and you've got stuff and you play like armor or something. But
armor is
or Vision, right?
Vision is what I'm talking about right now.
The funny thing though is the Vision decks often run it themselves, because Vision's not only good for getting around it, but he's also just good for getting priority too, right? Like a 5/8
he's overstated
stats, right?
We are playing. I mean, I'm playing Alioth in the the Drooler deck, the Shuri Red Skull is running Alioth now. So
Yeah, there's a version. I think
Oh,
Interrobang
yeah.
popularized that version, which runs it. I'm not a huge fan of it in that list in particular because I think they also run armor, and that feels a little limiting with it. But like,
the list is
it gets the job done,
I
right?
think
Like,
I think
it just
Interrobang
works.
cut armor in favor
Okay,
of
that would make more sense then. That would
Mobius
make a lot more
actually, but
sense.
like
I think armor would be fine because you're gonna like Shuri in your armor lane, and then you'll Alioth in the non-armor lane. 'Cause
Yeah,
they'll
maybe it
never-
is fine.
I
I
think
don't.
in this, it's so linear that I think it's okay. But like, I see like this is the point when like you're starting to rationalize counter synergies because like the linear like game plan just like
It's just
outstats and
so good.
outpowers.
Yeah.
Like that's how you know it's problematic.
yeah.
And
Like
people
look,
hate this card. This
yeah,
the amount of hatred I'm seeing for this card is like, it's not quite Galactus level, but it's the next best thing, right?
it's close. So
And
this
it
is
gets
what I
the
will
double
say.
whammy too, right? Because all the people who like Galactus are like, "Oh, you shouldn't have killed Galactus. You should have just hit Alioth, so you could leave my Galactus alone." So it gets like the double hate, which is funny. But I like the card, and my hot take is I think it's not a bad thing for the game to have a card that encourages priority. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if this maybe sees a little bit lessening of stats. Like I could very much see them pumping this down to like a 6-4 or 6-3.
It doesn't even matter. It could be a 6-2 like Galactus because it just has
Well, it
to
matters in a
It
specific
matters.
instance, right?
like
I think
Doom, but
Doom is the big one. If this becomes not 5 and like 5 is the difference maker, I could see Doom coming back into the
Doom
meta a little
comes
bit
back,
more.
yeah.
But like, and I think that'd be okay. The card would still be powerful and still be run. And I don't think like I think the people who really hate this card, the common suggestion I see from them is like make it so that it destroys the things after they flip, so I at least get my effect out or whatever. But I think those people either do or don't realize that that would make this card unplayable.
Yeah.
Like
well,
it
and
would be
Glenn, I think
go right
had
into the
said,
garbage.
didn't Glenn say that like they wanted this to be unique and to have this specific unique effect?
Yeah, they said they don't want to do things that interact with flip down cards very often, but that was very much an intentional part of the design. And I think this just shows they're
Oh,
trying to
no.
make 6-drops more impactful.
Yeah.
Because, like, think about it. They haven't really, have they? Trying to think of 6-drops they've released post, like, Thanos and Galactus. Have they even released 6-drops? I'm trying to think. I have the game open. I'm going to look really
No.
quick.
It's been a
'Cause, like,
while.
6-drops have traditionally been a bad like slot in Marvel Snap, with a few rare exceptions because you unless you're playing a ramp deck, there's only one turn you can play them, and they have to be so impactful that you're okay taking up your whole final turn, right?
Mhm.
I guess the last 6-drop you could say released was like the Living Tribunal, or you can make an argument for like High Evo Hulk, are like probably the two most recent 6-drops. But most of the 6-drops came out when the game came out, or shortly after with like Null and Galactus and Thanos. They really haven't added a lot of 6-drops to the game, and I think in part is because they know that 6-drops in general are in a 6-turn game. It's a high cost to run a 6-drop because generally you can't play that on any other turn.
Mhm.
So it's very limiting, and so I think they really wanted it to. I mean, I think they wanted all of the cards in the Loki season except Ravonna to make a big splash, and they certainly did. Like Loki, Mobius, and Alioth are like single-handedly flipping the game on its head. So
I
it's
just had a
interesting.
thought. We all think
that-
that Alioth's going to get nerfed because of, popular acclaim. And for those that are upset that I pronounced it that way, I'm really sorry.
That's why we do it.
That's how we say it in Canada.
Yeah, it's my thick
Yeah.
Canadian accent.
Yeah.
What if they nerf Alioth the same way they nerfed Arrow? Because Arrow is one of the few cards that affected face down
Card would be
cards,
dead.
right?
It would be super
It will
dead.
destroy one card instead of all the cards.
No,
Yeah,
it'd
of
be
course it'd
dead.
super dead.
And I don't think they would do that. Like, also, Arrow was a Series 3 card. This is a Series 5 card, and
Yeah,
unfortunately,
they just need to sell it one more time. And
Yeah,
they can change it in the next patch.
yeah. I think at some point this will eat a nerf, whether that's soon or later. I don't really know. But traditionally, how they go about things is when they don't really like when one card is seeing a ton of play across a ton of decks.
Yep.
And it's kind of weird because, like, obviously you don't want a card to become an auto include because if you have too many auto includes in a 12 card deck game, like it stifles innovation. But I do think sometimes they're a bit too heavy-handed, and like the Snowguard nerf was a good example of this. Snowguard was being played in a bunch of decks. They said, well, Loki's using these pieces, the generation pieces, a little too effectively, so we're going to nerf them. And now you only see Snowguard in Loki decks, much like the Collector. And I
Yeah.
really don't like how they're like, well, this card can be powerful, but only in this one deck. That it's like they're telling you how to play the game, basically, rather than you get. So it's funny because they're doing that in an attempt to create more diversity, but I think on the flip side, it actually stifles diversity because it limits where you can actually play these cards, and the decks that want them are still going to want them. It's just you're going to see them not as much in other decks.
So
If they only hit power on Alioth, though, like it won't. It'll still be everywhere. It's like it is the new Shang-Chi, effectively.
Yeah.
a new Shang-Chi.
People,
So
and you should treat it like such. If you're annoyed of losing to this card, just remember all the times in the past where you asked yourself the question of, I lose to Shang-Chi, but surely they don't have it, right? And then getting blown out. That's what this card does. It's just instead of losing priority to use it effectively, you're gaining priority to use it effectively. That's the main difference. And I don't know. I think it was always a little unintuitive. The fact that a lot of decks were intentionally trying to throw priority. Some people liked it because, it's a skill. You're trying to manage your priority effectively and where you place cards, and that's neat and all. But that skill is still present in trying to manage gaining priority as well. It's the same kind of thing. And it always, I personally, and I'm sure this is not a popular opinion, I prefer it this way. I think if the game should reward you for something, it should be trying to fight and get ahead and have more points than the opponent, because the whole point of Snap is having the most points in 2 of the 3 lanes by the end of the game. So the fact that the optimal strategy was like, avoid doing that until the very end. And I've seen this line, which is really funny from some people. It's like, well, this just means the game ends on turn 5. And my counter to that is that has been the case, like, for a very long time in Snap.
You know what? I can practically guarantee that if they change it, it's going to be, everyone's going to hate it and then want to go back to the way that it was before. Because like every time they do this, like, I mean, there's so many instances in Snap where something was like, people were complaining about this. Oh, this card sucks. Oh, this card's so frustrating. Oh, this collector's cash system. So like, and then they change it. And they try to sell you on like, oh, it's better now. Like and then we all realize that it was way better before. Like it's not gonna be better if they change it. It's fine.
Well, if they change it, you know what's gonna happen. Every time they nerf a card, even when the card is still good, it has nerfed card syndrome. People become allergic temporarily to playing the card. So even if the card is still strong, if they nerf it to, let's say, a 6/4, it will do what they want it to do, and it'll depress the play rate, if only for a limited amount of time. But we've seen it happen every time.
yeah, until
Well-
Johnson hits rank 1 with it.
But that's the interesting piece with them doing all these changes for the stupid Loki meta, and then the month changes, and now Loki is seeing no play. Like, what was the point in?
It's still seeing 5% play, which is significant. It's also still regarded as probably the best deck or among the best decks. So I think its depressed play rate is just because there's a shiny new bauble with Elsa that everyone's trying out.
Yeah, but isn't that why it got increased play rate to begin with? And then
Well,
next month, when there's another shiny new thing, like, will Elsa see decreased? I mean, it's the series
this is the
pass
problem.
card,
so we're not balancing around actual strength. We're balancing around,
the season pass
artificially introduced perception. I think that going back to the priority versus not priority, I really like the idea of like coming back from behind and swinging. I also think that that's a high risk play, and should be, there should be counterplay. I think specifically where we lose kind of the forest through the trees is that I like sometimes the idea of holding prio. But I think that the meta that we have right now, where holding prio is essential, is worse than previous ones we had, and it doesn't have to be that way. And to the other point you made, the reason that I think the meta is worse is because it feels very brute forced. And if we start looking at the decks, the top decks that use these 4 cards, and they're present multiple times in them, you start to see a very a narrowing, right? And that's kind of what I don't like to see. Um, and I don't think Alioth, ironically, is what's keeping the meta narrow. I think Alioth's like it kind of fought its way in there and wedged itself, because if there was no Alioth, it would be just
Blood
a
decks would
point.
be insane right now.
Yeah, it would be like a point slamorama, right? Like where you just vomit as many stats as you can, and you can't, there's no counter to that, right? The only way you can counter that is by dumping even more stats, right? So what decks can dump a lot of stats? Collector decks with like greedy collector decks with Loki, the flood
Loki,
decks
Iron
unchecked.
Patriot, Elsa Monkey stuff. The Thanos deck has been popping up and doing pretty well for people. It's like, it's weird. It's like, on one hand, there's a lot more variety than there was in the Loki season. So that's why I think there's like a bias towards the season. I did a little video talking about it today. Like, I think people hated the Loki season so much that the Elsa season gets a bit of slack because comparatively it feels like there's a lot more variety. At least
But there
that's how
really
I
isn't.
felt.
There's like 4 decks that you can play that are like, you can play anything you want,
I
and
don't know. I've been seeing a lot of variety, especially in Conquest too. Like just today, I ran into Deadpool. I ran into, God bless him, a discard gamer. Even on ladder, you've been seeing people do the Thanos stuff. Don't get me wrong; it's not the most varied meta we've ever had. Like it does kind of boil down to 4 main archetypes, and then there are a few other fringe things. But again, I think it's that bias showing through of like, well, I'd probably dislike this a lot more if we didn't just come from like a 1 deck season, maybe 2 deck season.
Yeah, so I suppose on the back of that, we're like in a going from like a 2 deck season or a 1 deck season to a 4 or 5 deck season is an improvement,
It feels like
relatively
more,
speaking.
right?
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. You got me. I think the other thing that has differentiated this season from the past season is, I think that something's changed with the ladder.
Oh yeah, something
I
definitely has.
saw far fewer bots, especially after 90, and I had a hard time hitting infinite. I like, this feels
Heard a
like it's
lot
the
of people say that
hardest month
hardest climb in a while.
since May, maybe
What
even
was
April.
May?
April would have been Hitmonkey. I'm just thinking like when they changed the ladder system. This is the hardest climb since they introduced the 8 cube like
Oh,
per
so
rank.
they made this easier to climb. Yeah, it's weird. It's like I've seen a variety of different experiences. I've seen a lot of people saying what you're saying, whereas it felt harder than previous seasons. For me, it was mostly the same, but I think I got more bots than other people did, and I don't exactly know why. I wonder if that's an MMR thing, where if there are less players in your MMR bracket, it gives you more bots or something. Because I got placed fairly high up, and I think when I finished my climb, I did it like the second day instead of the first day or whatever. And so a lot of the people I was running to, I think, got pulled out of my pool because they were like first day infinite. So that may have had it. Because on the first day, I really wasn't facing a ton of bots, but on the second day, I feel like I got more. Not like an insane amount. It was still more people than bots, and maybe slightly less bots than prior seasons, but they were still there. But I know in like your experience and like Nate, like you guys are not really seeing like any bots.
I mean, last month I basically only played bots, but I also think that perhaps my MMR decreased because I didn't really play any ladder post infinite last month
And they
where I did the
tweaked
month
something with
before.
the ladder too. Like the
Yeah.
post infinite ladder, they definitely tweaked it because if you remember last season, a lot of people were complaining that their numbers were falling a lot, right? And while that does still happen to a portion of the ladder, I'm sure, if you placed fairly high up, I'm noticing even as more and more people make it into infinite, I'm not getting pushed out of where I am. Like I went to sleep last night at like 490 and right now I'm at 510.
Oh,
It's
I'm
like
dropping like a rock. I hit like 2800 when I hit infinite, and I'm like 35, so I'm like in a
I think
free
they
fall.
normalized the snap points a bit though. They did something to it. I know safety, we were talking to him about this, and he's up in the top 50 right now, and he says he's noticed a very real difference in terms of how it feels with the snap points this month in a positive direction. So it's like, it's
So
interesting.
so let's look at some of the decks that safety would be facing kind of in loop or that you're probably seeing quite a bit of up on high ladder as well. I think that these are the 4 decks that if you're really seriously trying to win, you either have to be playing these decks or at least have a game plan against them. I think that to your point earlier, while these are the 4 best, there are some wild cards emerging. People are having success with Thanos. I don't believe, but time will tell. I unnerve Soulstone, but I think that no matter what, you need to be on the lookout for these decks, and really they were kind of the things that I kept running into that I struggled with on the climb. So I think first up we have drumroll. I don't know what order you put them in, Nate. So
I put them in whatever order they were in the slides. Elsa move is the first one.
Okay, so you put them in the because I numbered the images to prevent this from
This
happening.
is NHL's deck, right?
Yeah, so there are some variations to this, but basically this is the Elsa move deck. The key cards that you will see in this deck are the Kitty Pryde, Angela, and Elsa package that sees play in many decks. Those 3 cards are incredibly synergistic. And to go with the Elsa synergy, move is a natural kind of co-synergy with Elsa. So we've got Jeff, Silk, and Vision. And then to
Jeff,
pair off with
exclamation
Vision.
point.
Yes, Jeff.
Yep.
Big Jeff. That's a big Jeff. And then you've got Alioth that just goes so well with Vision. This has a little bit of spice with Jean Grey and Nebula. I don't own Jean, so I didn't run Jean Grey and Nebula. I ran. I don't even remember what I ran.
You were on. Weren't you playing the one I played, Blue?
Yes.
So it was Captain Marvel in one of the spots, and
Yeah.
let me look what the other one was really quick. It's like
Mobius.
Mobius, yeah. Mobius for that.
I ran that.
You kind of, in my opinion, you kind of need the Mobius if you're seeing any Loki, because the big weakness of the move deck traditionally has been Loki, because this is a deck that has very efficient cards and whatnot, and so Loki getting your cards is a big weakness of this deck. And so, although I do like what NHL did with it here, like the Nebula Jean Grey package is something I think has been underrated for a while. And Nebula is especially nice with Alioth, because if they're just going to slam one big idiot on the final turn, you know exactly where it's going. And you can move your stuff around to kind of avoid the downsides of Jean restricting you. And it's definitely a solid way to go with the deck. I was impressed with Captain Marvel a lot, because Captain Marvel got worse in the past, because in the mirror, whoever plays Captain Marvel first, that one essentially doesn't work against the opposing Captain Marvel. It's weird. But now that not every deck is running it, it gets better, and then it gets better even more when you make it a 4/7 with
We originally
Elsa.
tried Miles in the Captain Marvel slot, and because
Miles gets wrecked.
Yeah, because of Mobius, Marvel performed well. I do think that this is the superior Elsa Flood deck over the various Hitmonkey versions that are out there. The Hitmonkey package being Hitmonkey, Mysterio, Bishop, sometimes with Bast. This is just better, and the reason why this is better is because the stats from these cards are unconditional. Silk's a 2/5. I don't have to play Bishop and then 5 other cards to get it to 5 power. That's not to say that those aren't viable. I just think this is just
they're definitely viable,
pound better. And so if you want to play
that's
the
why
best,
it's weaker to Loki, right? Is because the average card quality is higher. So when Loki steals them, it's way more backbreaking. So it's kind of an interesting aspect, right? Because this is kind of worse into Loki, but I think on average better into other stuff than the monkey version. But I think the monkey version is better into Loki, because Loki decks typically aren't running Alioth, and they can't use your cards as effectively because they fill up their board so quick. They can't, if they get your monkey and your Mysterio, they're not getting a crazy monkey, because they already have 1 or 2 lanes mostly full. That's at least been my experience with it.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
I
Not
played just to chime in super quick. I played blues like Elsa,
The
like
Thor monkey,
no, not the one with Thor,
the other one.
but just the
the one with
Elsa, like
Alioth.
yeah, with Hitmonkey and stuff, and it plays a lot like a Sarah deck, but like
Yeah.
I was struggling on my Hitmonkey turns because it was like the most I could play would be like a 2 and a 3 and maybe the Wasp, and like, but it wasn't getting Hitmonkeys nearly the size that we would in other versions. And I got wrecked by this a couple of times because, especially like Jean Grey is nasty in this.
Yeah, Jean's really, really good. And the other thing with this deck is a lot weaker to Shadow King, which has become Shadow King's in like a weird spot because it got picked up as a really popular tech card to shut down Elsa and Kitty and Angela. Just a lot of stuff gets hit by Shadow King. But we counter tech with tech, and people just started putting Luke Cage in their deck. And but that's something like in my experience with the move deck. The move deck's really good, but man, when somebody has a Shadow King and you're not running a Luke Cage, it can be brutal versus this deck
Yeah.
because they can just totally blow out your Angela lane, your Craven lane. Like it can be pretty rough.
Yep. So, I mean, Elsa puts a lot of stats on the board. So our next deck also is famous for putting a lot of stats on the board. And the fact that this is still in the dialogue, like, drives me absolutely crazy. So
Oh
I
God.
I pulled this off of Twitter. This was someone who had Infinite. Snapdex retweeted it. It's Shuri Red Skull, your favorite
This
deck
is stock
from
Shuri, right? Like this is I think this
yeah.
is there are other versions of it people are playing, but this is like the standard popular one right now. Some people messed around with the Kitty one post Elsa being added, but I think it's been pretty universally agreed to be the weaker of the bunch. Sauron's just kind of the way to go now.
I
Um,
played this list up to rank 90. It was like playing on easy mode. Like,
Yeah.
yep.
I mean, and I mean, there's counters, but like if you're gonna lose, then you get out. But it just dumps so much stats that it's
I mean,
backbreaking for a lot of decks.
and it's good against Alioth because you can like you play armor, Shuri,
Mhm.
big vision, move
Yep.
vision, taskmaster, it's over.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah,
Like
it's very good against
vision's
them.
really, really good. And I think that's what's keeping this deck. I mean, the fact that it puts an absurd amount of points down, it's performing well, both in
And less
Conquest.
Shang-Chi, right? Like
Yeah.
Alioth is the prominent destroy tech card. So the fact that there's less, although I will say I got Shang-Chi like 3 or 4 different times today, so
I
people are
did
trying to bring it
too.
back.
It's coming back.
It's coming back slowly now that there's less Loki around, but it's Shuri is just very, very good. I will admit I've seen a lot less of it than I was seeing quite a bit of it in the first like few days of the season, but in the last few days, I really don't see much of this deck,
It's
and
a
I'm sure it's
5%
still
like Loki.
popular on ladder. But one, I think it's a deck people get bored of pretty quickly because the play pattern's rather repetitive. It's like big numbers are fun, but I don't know. I think people get bored of being like, "Oh, I made my Red Skull big. I made my Vision big. Here comes the Taskmaster." Like it doesn't feel like there's room to do much creatively with this deck. But some people like it and it's effective. So like,
It's a good grinding deck if you gotta mindlessly like play a lot of games. Like it's easy to know when to snap, and when you got the right pieces, you can snap fairly confidently. So I think there's a good
yeah,
reason
it's
why
true
it's a
too.
comfort pick. 5%. The move deck we looked at is about 12%, and if you take the broader Elsa Flood strategies into account, you can add another 20%. So 30% of the latter are these Elsa Flood decks, with about a third of those being a variation of the move deck we saw. So that's Shuri Red Skull. I think you'll all agree with me that it is not a deck I really want to speak more on because
Yeah.
I am still traumatized from months
Or
ago.
3 months of nonstop paste eating. Where's Shuri? Yeah, it was a rough time back when Shuri used to buff in any lane. It was pretty crazy.
Well,
Yeah,
there's
it's
just not
wild to
much to
think of.
say about it anyway. I mean, the play pattern is pretty straightforward. It is what it is. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I guess the one positive thing I can say about this deck is it's very easy to math out what you can beat and what you lose to because the list is so stock and whatnot that you'll be like, all right, they have a Red Skull and they made it big and they're going to copy it and they could play a Zero or an Ebony Maw with that. Can I beat that? And I do think that is one thing that we appreciate a little bit more now post Loki season is with Elsa, and I talked about this in the little video I did comparing the two. It's like with Elsa, even when you lose to Elsa, you can reasonably figure out like how many points they're going to get on the board a lot of the time to know if you want to stay in that game or leave it. You're not trying to be like, all right, these are the 12 cards in my deck, and I have to play around my own Iron Man and my own and all this stuff. And if you pick wrong, you just lose, and you have no way of knowing what they got because it's just random. I think that's one reason people don't mind the Elsa stuff as much is because it's generally clear when you have no chance, and you can kind of math it out to try and beat them. And it's more tech, like you can tech against it now. People may be breaking out the Luke Cage, but at least there was an option. Whereas with Loki, until Mobius, there really wasn't an option for teching against Loki unless you wanted to play like Phoenix Force or Cerebro 3, where your tech was just having a deck that was really, really bad if you didn't have all the cards together.
Yeah, you know, it's nice that I suppose a deck that people might already have assembled is viable. This is probably the most free-to-play friendly list that we're looking at here. Although some people are experimenting with Alioth, there are some anti-synergies with armor, but I still actually think it might be worth considering.
It's fine. The deck is strong enough as it is, and you'll definitely catch people off guard because people will be like, "Oh, they just plan around Shuri doing normal Shuri things, and then they get taken by surprise." So like, Alioth is a very good surprise factor card. A lot of people aren't going to be surprised by it in certain decks, but I think Shuri's definitely one of those decks where you can catch someone off guard with that card.
The people who did not buy Alioth are now regretting not buying Alioth, I think.
Yeah, but don't worry, Alioth will be back on the
Coming
reward
back.
track before long.
Yay.
Speaking of Alioth, our next deck prominently features our favorite puffy pink cloud, purple cloud.
Purple Cloud. Purple People Eater.
Huh.
Yeah, so this is an update to the Brood Absman deck with Elsa. I don't even know if Elsa's in need of this. This was a version that KM threw together.
It
I think
works. I've seen people do this,
You
and
don't
like
need Elsa, but she gives it
It's
even
not
more
bad.
stats. It's not bad. I agree.
but it's not like amazing in my experience. Like I've played a lot of Iron Patriot recently, and ultimately the core of this deck is so strong that
Mhm.
I think you can get away with card changes here. We can see he included Vision, which makes sense given that we talked about how that really helps versus posing Alioths. Um, I played a slightly different version, Iron Man in the Vision slot. Didn't use Jeff, although I will say Jeff makes a lot more sense if you're running Elsa because you can get the benefit of Elsa and then move the Jeff elsewhere. It also lets this deck get into closed lanes, which is something the other versions of it aren't typically as good at doing. They don't really have a way to get into a lane that's shut down. So I think there's definitely merit in this version. It's a fine version. The core of this deck is basically all the cards but Elsa, Jeff, and Vision. I ran like what Iron Man in the Vision slot. I've been using Rogue in the Jeff slot because Rogue has been really nuts in the mirror, and sometimes for some other decks, like it's just not bad. Although, if you don't want to be as fancy with it, Blue Marvel is a card that was very popular in this deck because it goes wide. And Luke Cage? Yeah, Luke Cage, because there was so much Shadow King going around. This deck very much cares about its boosted stats. If you're buffing up the broodlings and whatnot, or even in Elsa's case, where you're buffing stuff up, I think Luke Cage is very, very good. And the other thing with Cage that I really like is this is a deck that, since it's going wide, it really doesn't like when you get a location that's like, oh, your cards have -2 power here, or
negative
-3
zone.
power. Yeah, those locations are typically really bad for this deck. And while they're bad for, I think, most decks, they're especially bad for this one because we rely on our power through multiple bodies. So the fact that we can negate those locations that are otherwise really bad for us has been really good to me. And you're negating it's less popular now than it was a few days ago, but people are still running it. You're negating a popular tech counter in Shadow King. But I think this is one of the best decks in the game, whether you go this version, the other version. Young Wave got number one with a similar version. I think he was running the Blue Marvel, and when I faced him, he was running Rogue, but he wasn't 1 anymore. He was like 4. But still, very top of ladder with Iron Patriot. It's just a very, very good deck. And it's funny because you see people trying to brew Silver Surfer decks a lot because people really like the card and the archetype. And half the time, these new Surfer builds people come up with are just like a more scuffed version of Iron Patriot.
Yeah, they are.
Like they'll run a lot of the cards, but they'll try and make it a little different. And I get
Silver
it.
Surfer is one of the worst cards in this deck. It wouldn't surprise me if at some point it gets cut for something else that makes you gain more stats more efficiently. But
Well,
I mean, for now, it still puts a lot of numbers on the board, so it kind of
yeah,
elevates
it's just
that
good
potential.
and it pairs well with Patriot on the final turn when you do have your Brood Absorbing Man or your Brood Lad and stuff. When you have 3-drop spread across the board and you just slam Patriot Surfer, the game just ends a lot of the time.
I saw somebody
it's very
running Dazzler in this list.
Sure.
Yeah.
Kind of the same idea as Elsa, really, if you think about it.
Yeah,
Just
similar.
different stat,
but
not as good.
And I think this deck gets a bit of a bad rap because people are like, oh, it's the easiest deck to play in the world. And don't get me wrong, when you
No.
draw Forge into Brood into Absorbing Man, it's pretty simple. But the challenge of this deck is figuring out how to win when you don't have the perfect curve, because that's going to happen a lot of games. And that's when the deck actually becomes a lot more challenging. We did a co-op with Blue recently, and I think really kind of opened his eyes to like, wow, there's a lot more to this deck than like it appears on the surface. Because I didn't really like the Brood deck when it first came about. I thought it was kind of dumb. But recently, especially after the Absorbing Man nerf, I really like this deck. It's been fun to play, and I'm sad that it's so limited in terms of the population that can play it, because you really can't play this deck without Iron Lad. There's no adequate replacement, and unfortunately,
I'd argue
as
you
we
can't
know,
play it without Alioth either, bluntly.
probably true, but a lot more people have that card than Iron Lad, I think. And
I suppose, yeah.
Lad's not coming back until sometime next year in the caches. So unless you get really lucky or have a lot of tokens, if you don't have Iron Lad, it's kind of rough out there.
Yeah.
And that's why. What do you know what the play rate of this deck is? I'd be curious because I think
it's high.
Play rate is it really high?
Yeah, because remember, for the engaged player base, so
They probably have Lad, the really engaged folks.
Oh, it's actually not that high. It's 6%. So it's 1%
I think
higher than
it would be
Loki.
a lot higher if Lad was a more obtainable card. Like if Lad hadn't only appeared in one. And the other thing is, when Lad appeared in the Spotlight Cache, it was like the second week after it came out, so a lot of people didn't have stuff saved up or blew their caches on the first week. And so I know a bunch of people who said that they were like, yeah, I just didn't have caches because I used them on the first week and I couldn't get it, and I had no idea he wasn't going to be coming back for so long. So
I wasn't gonna get Iron Lad, but
the card is good.
Someone convinced me. I think it was NHL that convinced me if I didn't get Iron Lad, I'd be sorry. And sure enough, he was right. I mean, it's not a card that I played a lot, but it's an important piece in a lot of different decks.
It's just very powerful. This is the main deck that it was very powerful in Darkhawk decks, but we're not seeing a ton of those. They are starting to come back a bit. There's one list that's cool from WLOS, who he is kind of brought back a Storm Guardians list, which makes me happy because I always loved the Storm Guardians of the Galaxy
I played
list.
that. It's really fun. I mean, it's
a lot of
to the
people
one
are playing it.
Yeah,
and it's pretty decent. I don't think it's the best thing in the world, at least when I played it, because I think when you run into the Elsa decks, it can be really troublesome sometimes. But I do think there is merit in Storm right now, and it's cool to see someone succeed with the Guardians, because he got pretty high up on ladder, I think, last month and this month with it. So it's a testament to that. People can succeed with different stuff, but unsurprisingly, Alioth is right there in the list, so it's still an Alioth deck, just kind of a different flavor. Also a Mobius deck.
All right, so our last deck, last but certainly least, Loki. So this probably is a dated
Ooh.
dated list looking at it right now. I mean, people are still running Quinjet, but I think that perhaps you want to get rid of Quinjet and maybe even run your
Yeah.
own Mobius.
So the major changes that have happened to Loki since this list, Rogue got dropped by most Loki players. Legion has also gotten dropped by a lot of Loki players. People have instead opted to put in Elsa because they fill the board pretty effectively. Let's go with Kitty Pryde, Angela. And a lot have been dropping Quinjet in the wake of Mobius. A lot of them are running Mobius themselves for the mirror or just for other decks it's useful against. And then the last card is Maria Hill has been very prominent just as a 1-drop that generates another card, specifically a 2-drop. It's just one of the
better Agent
the
13.
only it's the only card that they changed with generating cards that actually kind of is seeing play after that change, unlike Cable or Mantis.
So Loki is just another Elsa deck.
Yeah.
Okay, I
It's
mean, it
more
makes sense.
Loki than Elsa, but
It's
like
running Kitty and
it can
and
go
Angela,
either way,
so-
which is why I think it's strong, because since Loki himself has gotten weaker in the wake of Mobius, the fact that you aren't all in on Loki collector or bust is I think a big part of why the deck is still successful, because you can just do the Elsa things. You don't even have to play the Loki if it doesn't look like a game where that will be useful. So
And we don't have any lists to share, but I suppose I would be remiss if I didn't make an honorable mention for the Thanos decks that have been popping up that have been doing well in the tournament scene.
yeah,
I
that
don't.
just happened. Like that.
Yeah,
It's a
and
very
I'm
new
not,
development.
and I'm not convinced.
I
but-
tried, I tried a couple as well, and I'm not convinced either. Like, I didn't think they were bad, but I didn't think that they really were up to the same level that these four.
Yeah, it's
have
strange. I think Thanos can still scam people,
It
and
can.
so I played
Oh,
a
it
bunch with the deck. It felt okay to me, but like having seen like 3 or 4 different players all very, very high up and climbing with it, I'm convinced there's something there. It's just I think
Yeah,
it's
it's running
a
Vision and
harder.
Alioth
Yeah, that's a big reason why. But
and X and
I think
Professor
it's
X.
harder to play that deck because of the variance involved with your draw and the stones, and I think the skill cap for Thanos is just higher. And also when it low rolls, it feels like it low rolls harder than low rolls on other decks. But nonetheless, it does look like, surprisingly, in spite of the Soulstone nerf, Thanos is pushing its way to be a top contender, much in part because of the strength of some of the other cards. It runs Mobius, it runs Vision, it runs Alioth, so it makes sense. But it's cool to see Thanos making a bit of a comeback, because he really was Thanos snapped out of existence when that nerf initially hit. So it's nice to see, and I hope we continue to see it, because I think Thanos is a very popular archetype people really liked, and it was sad to see him go. And he's obviously one of the most iconic characters in the game. I mean, Marvel Snap, come on. So it's nice to see him start to come back a bit, and I'm curious to see if it changes at all. The main list, it was actually running Leader, which is interesting, and the reasoning for Leader was because it's anti-Alioth technology. Because if you Leader in a lane they're not going to Alioth you in, you copy theirs, and your Leader copy blows up theirs. Yours doesn't die because you didn't play it. But even the person who popularized the deck, Johnson, said he doesn't think this is actually the meta for Leader in the deck. It was just kind of an experimentation to counter them while behind. And it's a very neat idea. The one thing I didn't like about Leader was because of your stones, you're filling up your board a lot. Mm-hmm. And with Elsa filling up the board a lot. So sometimes you're in a position where 1 or 2 of your lanes only has one spot. So it makes playing the Leader awkward because, well, if they play in that lane and it's not Alioth and you fill it with the Leader, then you don't get the copy. And so I think that's the one spot you're going to see people start to move away from. But the rest of the deck seems very solid. And I've ran into a bunch of people playing it, and I have been losing to it. There's definitely something to Thanos there.
So Nate,
yeah,
after we're done with the podcast, you're gonna do you're presently ranked 97. So what are you gonna play after hearing this deep dive?
That's a good question. I mean, okay, I did most of my climb with the Drooler deck. Like, I mean, I lovingly say like it's the Shuri Red Skull thing, just because I've been distracted and like
Yeah.
it's an
Nothing
easy
wrong
deck.
with wanting to
It's
press
an
the easy
easy
button.
deck to pilot. There's not a lot of big brain stuff. I will say that I didn't find it very fun, and so I could kind of switched over to the early version of that Elsa deck that we were running. I liked the move version. In fact, I was playing your Elsa deck and got like ran over by the move version. It's just there's some big brain plays in it, and it's a little bit draw dependent. I mean, if you can get an early Craven, it's amazing, right? Or an early like Elsa, and then being able to drop move cards, Nightcrawler, Jeff, Vision into the Elsa lane and buff them, and then move them out like it's crazy. So I'll probably play that because it's adjacent to what I've been playing, but I think it's a little bit better, and I'll have like the brain trust like with me to like say, like don't play that. That's wrong.
Man,
but
I find decks that run Silk exhaust me.
It's a lot of thinking, and like it's very easy to trip yourself up. And even when you do think about it correctly all the time, you're at the mercy of 50-50 sometimes. So
Yeah.
I love the card, but I agree. Like if I've been streaming a long time, Silk decks are like the last deck I will not like want to play at the end of a stream because I've already been thinking about the game for a while, and like they require excess thinking.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I don't know. I mean, but I just wasn't happy ultimately. I mean, I'm at 97 with it, so it's not bad, but like I kept getting beat out by other decks. And so I want to run something a little bit different than I was with that kind of Elsa bounce, whatever it was. And so the move thing seems like the next best stat bomb outside of the Shuri Red Skull, which I just, it's okay, but I'm just bored of it.
All right.
Yeah,
I think
and
it's an excellent choice. It's what got me the rest of the way. Yesterday? Was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I couldn't go by without an honorable mention to my new favorite thing to mess around with, and it's definitely the Phoenix Force. I love the Phoenix Force now.
I'd love to. I'm gonna have to watch you play it, but I'm gonna have to do it probably in. I'll have to do it in Conquest just to get
Yeah,
the hang of it.
and it's good in
probably.
Conquest. I have taken like I think 2, almost 3 Infinity tickets with it this month so far. It's been crushing people, and it's good in the wake of the Alioth meta, because you can. So the thing with Phoenix Force is you have 2 main win conditions, right? You blow up a multiple man, you bring it back on 4, you move your stuff around the board, you make a bunch of big multiple men. Pretty simple.
Mhm.
Well, you're not going to draw a multiple man in Phoenix Force and a destroy piece every game, right? So you need a backup plan. And the backup plan for this deck is Nimrod. Nimrod, turns out, is still very good, especially when you go Shuri into Nimrod and to blow it up twice.
Yeah. Actually, you're right.
Like that's how I win like half of the games is with Nimrod. I might even win with Nimrod more than Phoenix Force. But the nice thing is that previously Destroy Nimrod decks had a weakness to Alioth, right? Because you would Shuri your Nimrod and you'd often be winning that lane, but you don't fight for priority very hard. So if your opponent is smart and they have Alioth, they'll just be like, "Oh, I'll just play it in the Nimrod lane, and their things will blow up, and then boom, they're over." And this is where we are finally seeing. It's what's kind of funny about this deck is it's the deck of season pass cards that like were awful when they came out.
The ghost of season pass card past.
Yeah, it is.
You say that 5 times fast.
Yeah, right. But that's exactly it. It's Ghost Spider is finally useful, and she's been the queen of anti-Alioth tech because when you have Carnage and Venom or Carnage and Deathlock, you have 1 mana left over, and now that Ghost Spider costs 1, you yoink the Nimrod out of the lane, they Alioth and they hit nothing, and then you blow it up and blow it up again, and boom, you often beat them. And I've done that a whole ton. And Ghost Spider is still really good with Phoenix Force because you can weave it in with the Phoenix Force. I actually had a really funny moment earlier today where there was a ramp location out. So we had an extra mana. And I played Shuri on turn 4. And turn 5, I went to play Nimrod. and they Alioth me on 5, and they blew up the Nimrod. But they had priorities, so the Nimrod didn't reveal, right? It didn't go anywhere because it wasn't
Right.
revealed. Now, an interaction that many might not know is when you play a card into the Shuri lane, if that card gets destroyed before it reveals, your Shuri effect doesn't get used up. It's still there.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, it's weird, but that's how it works. It basically treats the card as if it was never played. So the next turn, they snapped me. They thought they were chilling and weren't gonna have any issues because they just got rid of my win condition, right? And it was a turn 7, or no, it wasn't a turn 7 game, but I had 7 energy. So I played Phoenix Force to bring back the Nimrod and double it up, and then ate it, and then won the game, and it was
Wow.
glorious.
Wow.
It
Oh my
was,
goodness, that's
it's
hilarious.
it's a lot like the Brood deck in the lines to win are often very straightforward, but sometimes you can like find these weird ways to do stuff the opponent isn't expecting, and it feels very satisfying. And Zola's been another big part of why I've liked the deck, because I didn't believe in Zola at first, but it's another really great anti-Alioth tech card, because sometimes you just have a thing in a lane and you can Zola it and you just get people. Especially good with Nimrod because it blows up the Nimrod and then you get more copies of it again. And
Oh my gosh. That one caught me a couple of times when there was like a Venom in a lane by itself and then it got
yep, that's a
Zola'd,
great way to do it.
and
Yep,
I was
you
like,
get the
"Oh
Venom.
no. Oops. Oh no."
Yeah, and it's like it's so easy to forget about that stuff. And the tech card or the flex spot I've been using has been Magic. I know Safety prefers Human Torch, and I'm gonna try that out at some point because there's like no Killmonger around. But Magic's been cool because not only does it get rid of bad locations sometimes, uh, but also the things that were pushing Magic out of the metagame, Legion and Snowguard, aren't really played very much anymore.
Right,
Like I
right.
don't really see the Snowguard's only in Loki decks, and Loki's not as popular. And Legion, a lot of the decks running him, like Loki or Iron Patriot, like most of them have cut Legion recently. He's just not making the cut in a lot of lists, probably because of Vision, right? A lot of people are putting Vision in the Legion slot. He's taking up that 5 cost.
Hmm.
And so Magic has actually been good because this is a combo deck. And so sometimes getting that extra turn to make additional Nimrods or move the Phoenix Force again can be, or just setting up for a powerful Zola can be really good. Like it's been surprisingly effective. And the real winner of Magic is getting to use that cool new tarot card variant.
It is pretty, and it's a good value bundle as well. So
3 times value.
maybe yeah, wow value. Perhaps then we reviewed, we went in the 4 decks, and I still think those are the best 4, but 2 slightly off meta-ish choices in Thanos and Phoenix Force, or kind of like a destroy combo with Nimrod.
There you go.
Maybe
Sorry, I should have put
you.
it up on the screen, but it's there now. There we go.
I think that you convinced me that this month is better than last month. But all things being relative, I think that the ghosts of last month are still there. It casts a long shadow over this month.
I agree,
I
but
want
like, wouldn't you rather see all Elsa than all Loki? Like,
Yes.
it's
not
just,
Well,
even close.
it's
If it
just
was
yes,
only Elsa,
but
I'd be okay with it right now
I mean,
compared to last
if
season.
you
I
ask
hated it so
me
much.
if I wanted to be if death by hanging or by firing squad, I'd prefer neither nor. So I mean. I feel like that's it's an equivalency, a poor equivalency, and I think this is a good segue into the last topic that I wanted to cover tonight, and it's a bit different than gameplay. It's the other big topic that seems to be the focal point of every conversation we have, the economy.
Oh
So,
boy.
oh boy,
ruh-roh.
so every time a new patch gets released, it gets data mined for the upcoming months, and it's our first look at some of the things to come 2 months ahead. In this case, December. Now, I want to caveat this by saying that generally speaking, when you're 2 months ahead, everything is subject to change, and it has changed in the past. Things that we are going to be discussing right now are painted by the specter of how things are today. And I mean, they've changed the economy so much over the last year that by the time December rolls around, there could be changes to this, and this may not apply. So this is very speculative. But what I want to speculate about specifically is December. And the thing that is interesting about December as opposed to November and every month prior is that the first week in the spotlight banner, whatever you want to call it, of each month would have the season pass card of the previous month as the Series 5. And by the way, I don't think
Wait,
that
no, it didn't. I don't think that's true. It gets
did.
added to Series 5, but it's not guaranteed for the first month.
Okay, in the past it has shown up there, but regardless, December is going to be introducing a new card the first week.
It's
So
now
there'll
more an off week, right? Previously, it was an
Yeah.
off week where like they would put in just cards that have been around before. Like what was it last week? It was like Thanos, Echo,
20.
X-23. I think
Yeah,
were the
Loki
three.
wasn't in there. Yeah.
Yeah, so they
There
don't
you go.
always do the season pass card right away. And a lot of times it's been off week, and we're noticing in this week or in this month, there is no off week. It's they're starting with a new card, and that's a pretty big change because previously in a 4-week season, you would get the season pass and 3 new cards. But now in this 4-week season, we're getting the season pass and 4 new cards. So that's kind of huge, and that could mean in a 5-week season, you could get the season pass and 5 new cards. Like that's a lot, and people are already having trouble keeping up with these new cards as it is. So I'm curious to see. On my guess is that they probably saw a trend where the first week of the month was by far the week that people were just not opening, and they wanted to change that. They wanted each week to be impactful or interesting to players. And
But
so I
week
think
one,
that's why they're
everyone gets
changing it.
the series pass card too. So it's like if you want something new every week, if you're that, if you need
Yeah.
that.
Well, this shakes it up even more. Maybe, I doubt this is the reason, but maybe this is an attempt to say, hey, we want people to experiment with more stuff on the first week than just the season pass card.
I think that unfortunately for me, a lot of trust has been lost. So I tend to look at this through a more cynical lens.
Mhm.
So on the one hand, you have the introduction of more cards into Series 5. The other hand, you have a system that was put into place, and even the most optimistic or people who are bullish on the new system, when it came out, were very careful to say, if series drops don't occur at a regular cadence or frequency, then the system will become gradually worse. And
Yeah.
so we have not had series drops, and now we're seeing the frequency of cards entering into these tranches kind of increase. By definition, the system is becoming worse for those who are unable or unwilling, or those who spend less or don't spend anything at all. It's a bit alarming. Of course, the contrarian me will say, well, who wants the blob anyhow? It's so freaking bad. But
I've seen quite a few people excited about the blob. It's
yeah, and the card could, like, look, here's the thing
also
with
the variant's amazing. I'm
is
not
it?
gonna go for it, but I love the his fashion
Oh
Hellfire
yeah.
Gala variant looks very cool.
So this is the thing about Snap, right? Like from a balance perspective, like okay, maybe the blob is bad, but they'll buff it. Cards that there are some notable exclusions, like
Or he's good
Rescue.
at ramp, right? Like
Yeah.
I think he's a card a lot of people will try out in ramp, right? Because he's bad as a 6-drop on 6 most of the time, right? But if you're playing a ramp deck and you play him on 5 and you have America Chavez in your deck, well, you're getting at least 9 power onto him, so that's a 6-12. You're getting down on 5, probably more than 6-12 because you don't just have Chavez in your deck, you have more cards. And you slam a Zola and you have a better Black Panther sometimes.
Yep.
Wow, that's a
That's
card.
just it's
I
something to think about. Look at that art though. Isn't that art great? It looks
Yeah,
I think it looks really good.
kind of hot. I actually really dig it. I think it's
Right?
hilarious, man. The art in this game is just. I like how they basically said we're not gonna have one aesthetic or one style. We're just gonna do everything. And
It's pretty
and
cool.
and
You know what
yeah,
though? It's
like
very on brand for comic books, like
It
comic book
is.
alternate
Is it?
variant covers and all of that. It's
Okay.
it's very on brand. So And speaking of which, talking about December, right? I believe is the first time that we're seeing a comic book cover
Yeah,
as
they're
alternate
introducing these.
artwork for a card. I saw something on Twitter today earlier, and I don't know if it was real or fake, but it was a Thanos variant
Oh,
of
it's real.
of
It's
Yeah, the
real.
Thanos
Yeah, it
Infinity,
was
the
comic.
data
Infinity Stones, or the
Yep.
Infinity
Yep.
Wars or whatever comic book.
Infinity
was-
Saga, I think. Yeah.
It was data mined. Yep.
Yep, that was in the data mine for the patch. It's really cool. It's neat to see them do this because a lot of the art, whether people know it or not, a lot of the art in this game is variant covers for comic books. Like I've seen a bunch of people pick up
It
some like
almost all
Nebula
of it is.
comic, or like a lot of them, with the exception of like Dan Hips, aren't. But a lot of the art in the game, especially the variants, are from comic book variant covers that have been done in the past, which is cool.
Yeah, yeah. There's
So-
definitely some original stuff, like all this Hellfire Gala stuff. I think is original.
Yeah, they
and-
definitely have been doing original stuff, and I think we're going to see more original stuff as time goes on. But
the artist part,
it's
like
cool.
the Rian Gonzalez stuff, I think is original, and some other things. But then again, like I know for sure, like all the baby ones, those are all comic book covers. The Art Germ stuff, they're all comic book covers.
Yeah, that's pretty
So-
cool. Also, a thing worth noting, and this is why it's great to take a look at the future months, is that you might notice that a lot of the cards dropping this month, with the exception of I think only Werewolf by Night, these cards are coming back relatively quickly to the boxes, which is really good for people who don't want to open boxes this month or aren't able to open boxes this month. It could mean that, hey, maybe you want Man-Thing, but you don't see value in opening it this week because you don't want Silver Samurai or Lady Deathstrike, or maybe you already have those cards.
That
Well, you can wait and then open it with Firestar and you get 2 new cards, right?
Yeah, see, that worked out well for me this week. Well, starting tomorrow, because I passed on Lady Deathstrike because I thought she was bad, and I passed on Silver Samurai even though I wanted him because I didn't want to pay 6,000 tokens. And now that
Now you have a good week.
yeah, we're in a week where it's like, well, I want the pass card or I want the new card, but then like there's no punishment because I don't have the other two, so like I'm just guaranteed to get
Yeah,
new
the
stuff.
system by design encourages missing out on cards to make future weeks better. And it's
So
really
that's
weird
kind of
because it punishes people who try and get most of the things. Because, like in my situation, only missing 3 cards, there are very few weeks where I'm getting 2 new cards.
Howard the Duck and which other two?
Right? Howard the Duck, Echo, and Lady Deathstrike are the 3 cards I do not
okay.
have.
Wow.
I-
I mean, Echo wouldn't be bad to have, but yeah, I understand why
Yeah,
that
none
is
of the
one that
weeks
you
have been
don't.
good though for
Yeah.
Echo for me. But
You
I
never opened up
really,
this week.
really wanted the.
oh, I'm opening this week for.
I
Well, I
not
mean,
this
like,
week, but
This
next.
past week with
I wanted the
Thanos.
Phoenix
No.
variant so bad, but I wasn't gonna waste my cubes or my collector's caches on it, spotlight caches on it, because it was just I had the other stuff and I didn't want the
Yeah.
variants. I really wanted, like, I have all the other Phoenix cards and I wanted it, but like it's just not worth. That
No,
being
it's-
said, I think I'm
Like
up
you have to make
like,
a decision about that, right? Like, we all love the cosmetics, but when that cosmetic is equating the price of a new card, it's like.
Yep.
I think I'm up to like either 9 or 11 spotlight
Nice.
caches now. Like I'm starting to stockpile them, which is great.
It
So-
helps insulate you a bit, right? And then you just cross your fingers and pray to Flannel Jesus that you high roll, and it only takes 1 or 2 boxes to get the card you want. And
I
Yeah.
mean, I'm ahead enough now. Honestly, like I'm tempted to try to get all 3 cards this month or this week. Like I don't really want Lady Deathstrike. Like I think if I open the new card and Silver Samurai, I'd be happy. But
yeah, I'm just going for all 3 because I want the Rian Gonzalez Silver Samurai. I don't need Lady Deathstrike, but like it's a very rare time where I can get 2 cards with a week, so I'm gonna take that because even though I don't think she's great, I think she'll be fun to mess around with a bit.
yeah,
And then Man-Thing, I would have bought Man-Thing with tokens, but since I want the 2 other things, I might as well just go for him and call that a week because I looked through November and December, and truthfully, the things I want most are this month, and like 1 or 2 things next month. But it's this week, and then most of the other cards in October, I think I'm going to buy with tokens. I think this is really the only week I might cave on is the Nico week, because I do like the Kitty variant, and I really don't like the Phoenix Force variant, but it's a Dan Hip, so I
Why?
wouldn't be.
It's so good. I
I
don't
don't know.
understand your
It
dislike
creeps
for
me
it.
out.
He's
Creeps me out.
It gives him the creeps. So
It's weird. It's like the Dan Hip eyes style. Maybe it'll look better animated. It
I'm
looks
excited for
weird with
that
the
one.
Phoenix.
I'm all over it.
Yeah, it's great.
It's not like you're ever
Zombies.
gonna see it anyway, outside of your hand. But
Oh, there we go.
You
and also
just
the
play
Alex
it. Just
Horley
play it
one
when
is
nothing has
amazing.
died. There you
Yeah,
go.
4 mana, 5 power, do nothing is pretty good.
Yeah.
I wonder. Oh, that would be actually a really funny thing to test. I kind of want to do this now. If you play a Phoenix Force and then it doesn't resurrect anything, and you Zola it, will the copied Phoenix Forces resurrect the original Phoenix Force?
You'll have
Because
to
it will
try
be
it.
destroyed before the other things come back. So if it's the only thing in the destroy pool, I mean, this is probably a terrible play, right? You're turning a 4/5 into 2 10 power things in the other lanes for the low price of 10 mana over 2 turns. There's like a million better things you can do with Zola, but it'd be kind of funny for the Phoenix Force to resurrect the Phoenix Force.
You know what that sounds like?
They're crap.
What's
Crap. Mega crap.
There you go.
Yeah, it's bad, but it's good to see that they're bringing back these October cards, because I think October is one of the more appealing months for a lot of players, and as we've talked about in the past, it's unless you're willing to pony up some dollary dues, it's hard to get all the things you might want. So it's nice to see. Like, I'm probably passing on Black Knight because I don't want to pay 6K for a card for an archetype that's in like the trash bin right now. And hey, well, Black Knight comes back on the 26th, and I want Celine, so maybe I'll open that week because it'll be a 2 card week for me. And yeah, so it's like it helps to skip on things sometimes, I guess.
Yeah, maybe that's why they're introducing the card in the off week, right? Because they're gonna run more repeats. And so if that's the reason, then I think, that's a fair trade-off. But unfortunately, every time there was like a fork in the road where it could be something that is advantageous to players, or to the players' detriment, whether to their agency or their overall potential for spend, it's always kind of worked out in the house's favor every time. So let's hope that this is a nothing burger, but we'll be watching.
And you know what we're still waiting for that we haven't heard anything about, and this is such a second dinner moment because I feel like they are not good with their messaging. I think their communication and messaging has gone downhill a lot over time, unfortunately. Um, but they so it's the anniversary, right? Like Snap came out a year ago, this month,
Mhm.
and they said they're doing something for it at some point, but like they haven't mentioned it at
They're
all.
gonna charge
And
us money. That's what they're gonna do.
there's the
Yeah.
only thing we've seen that they haven't even talked about is that like bonus savings with the website, where if you spend money you get some little bonus trinkets, like a little bit of gold or credits, or people who spend $200 get Kim Jacinto Enchantress. But like it's just weird to me that they haven't you would think they would have used like their season, because like the season videos are like by far the most popular thing that most of the community sees, even casual people. You think they would have mentioned, like, outside of a throwaway line of, hey, we're doing something for the anniversary. And I don't know, just like it feels weird, and it feels like it's a free win, right? Like people are going to be happy with whatever they announce, but like it's just strange to me how they handle their comms sometimes, and like especially when there's like other stuff that people aren't as happy with, you can use this to offset that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh hey, they're giving us free stuff, I'm not as angry. So it's because we know they're doing something. I don't know what they're doing, but like we they've said they're doing something, so here's hoping it's good.
We shall see.
Before we wrap, the Jeff variant on the week of December 5th. Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Not for me.
That's 2 thumbs down for you audio listeners.
Yeah, it's. I don't think it's like objectively bad or
I
anything.
think he looks like a walrus. It doesn't even
He
look
does
like.
kind of look like a
It
walrus.
doesn't look
it's
like.
just.
I'm not trying to dump on the artist, but I despise it. I do not.
It's
like
not my
it.
style. Yeah, it rubs me.
Okay.
They did a Shauna one in that same style that actually looks pretty good.
Yeah,
But
I
something
agree.
about the style I just don't really. It doesn't appeal to me. It's like it doesn't look like. It doesn't remind me of Jeff. It just looks kind of like a generic character.
I don't dislike it. I like how kind of frumpy and derpy he looks. A
Mm-hmm.
700 gold variant, sure. A spotlight? I thought spotlights were supposed to be special and unique. And I'm sorry,
That's
the
special,
Jeff,
all right. Or this is what
the
my
baby Legion,
my grandma would
not
say, like
yeah.
when she didn't like something because she didn't want to be rude. She'd say, "Wow, that sure is something."
Bless your heart, as we say in the
or she'd
South.
say, "Wow, that's interesting." Like this is
Yeah.
the ugliest card I have seen in ages. I cannot stand it. I don't mean to.
Wow.
And Jeff
be
has
like-
so many good variants too. I think that's part of it.
It's
Is like
just
the Jeff
so
variants are so
Feels
dirty.
so
good.
strongly about this. I
Look
didn't
at
think
it.
I didn't think my end of show question was gonna elicit such an emotional reaction.
It's
Yeah,
terrible.
it's. I just don't like it. Yeah, it. I'm sure it's gonna appeal to people and whatnot. And again, like the same artist did a Shauna. I think actually looks good. It's
I agree.
just something about this is strange to me, and it does. I don't find it. I mean, the idea is cool. It's like Jeff riding a surfboard. It's fun.
Yeah.
But it's
It's
yeah,
just
something
not my.
about it
It's
just
just not
doesn't
my
feel
thing.
Jeff to me.
For 700 gold, man, even 1200 would be better than putting it in a spotlight chest. But this is like this is like a continue of like the Jeff outrage saga, right? Big
Yeah,
Jeff,
first it was
slayer
Dan
of big
Hip.
bads. Yeah.
And I had a great comment in my chat the other night where it's like Dan Hip variants were supposed to be for the proletariat, and then they changed it with the spotlight, and now it's for the bourgeoisie. And it's like it's rough. Yeah, this is the Shauna. I think this feels. I don't know why. I just like I find this like a better.
Yeah, I think
Art.
part of it is because
It feels like the character more. I guess.
When I think for me, I agree with you. It's because it didn't look in character to me. Because when I think of Jeff is the cute baby land shark, and all the pictures we see is like Gwenpool is like holding him, like he's little and he's adorable and cute. And then you see this like giant walrus looking thing, and it's like, what is that? Like it looks like a little elephant with the shark head, and it's just like it's cute and whimsical, but it doesn't feel like Jeff, right? It's Jake the teenage land shark.
Yeah, Jake the teenage leg cracker like
Gosh.
that.
Right? I mean, it's different.
No, I
don't-
agree. It's like, yeah, it doesn't feel like it has that same aesthetic that we're known from seeing with Jeff.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Variants. We all know that that's something that we're all passionate about. We learned that, you put variants in your social media posts and more people engage with them because people like them. Yeah. Well, I think that gets to the bottom of things we wanted to cover. Of course, we could talk about the economy all night. I think that our conclusion is we're going to have to wait and see. It can go either way, and we hope that it goes in a way that gives players more agency by having more frequent cards be repeated. And I guess the other conclusion for tonight is perhaps the meta is a little bit wider than we give it credit for. Even if it does feel more restrictive, it has been more so in previous months. So there are some deep cuts for those that are willing to venture in the off-meta angle. I think, though, for Nate's remainder climb, we'll be sticking squarely with the tier 1 options.
Old reliable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just put our socials into the chat for those that are listening to the audio or watching on YouTube. Those social contact points will be in the respective description and or comments. Guys, really appreciate you joining with me on a Monday night to talk some Snap. We're going to see how the rest of this month develops, and we've got an OTA coming on Thursday, so perhaps we'll have something to talk about next week.
Very good.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right, here. What little last second question? If you could choose any card, you don't have to say how or whatever, but if there's one card, if you got the designer hat on and you could have one card be changed. What's What's a card you'd like to see changed for Thursday?
Oh, I'd just like to
Buff or nerf, it doesn't matter.
revert Galactus.
All right, I'll take things that will never happen for 500, but
Revert
I
Shauna while
appreciate
you're
the
at it.
Yeah, all right, that's base. What about you, Blue?
So knowing that OTAs are numeric only, I would like to see Mobius be changed. I really don't like how it's such a warping card and an
It's
auto
so
include in
free,
so many
right?
decks.
At 2/3.
But I think that's going to require more than like levers being pulled for its numbers. So Soulstone reversion.
Okay, I don't think they can do that on OTA because it's not a number. But
I'm still on board with that.
I think they could fix Mobius really simply in an OTA. You know what they do? They swap him and Shauna's cost, or not Shauna, him and Ravona's cost. Make Ravona 2, make Mobius 3. Give an actual cost to putting the card in your deck, having to lose tempo on a 3/3. I think that would it wouldn't fully resolve the restrictions he creates, but it would make there be an actual cost to playing the card in your deck, which I think there really is like no cost to playing that card right now. I think that's something we could see happen. So hopefully that'd be cool.
Yeah, so I'd like to see Soulstone get reverted or something done with Mobius. You know, I think right now it's tough. That's a tough question to ask. I don't have like an insta like answer
That's
like
fair.
Nate with Galactus. Yeah, what would you have them change?
Shauna or Rescue. Those are two at the top.
Rescue.
Oh yeah,
Taylor.
rescue.
Yep.
Yeah.
We know they're cooking something with Rescue. I don't expect Rescue to be an OTA. I think she's going to be a patch card, especially because Rescue, they've mentioned in the past, cards that have visual effects usually take them longer, because if they change the card in a meaningful way, sometimes they have to change the visual effects, which is why we haven't seen, they mentioned that as a direct reason for not changing Angel, is because that's a card that has VFX, and those ones take longer to change, because they often have to
Right.
change the effect to match the card. So it's more work than just switching a number. So yeah, I would like to see Rescue changed in some way. There are a lot of different ways you could change the card. I'm not really sure what the best one is. And Shauna, just revert her. Just put her back. Give me or give her a power boost. Like, I think she's just so bad in the current form, and it makes me sad because I used to like play. I mean, the deck I used to like to play would be dead now anyway because of Mobius, because it was a Zabu Zoo with Shauna and Kazar. But give her some more power or revert her, please. I hate the new Shauna.
Yeah. Same.
All right, Zombies hates the new Shauna. If you
Mhm.
didn't know, now you do.
I'll scream it from the hills.
So what I'm hearing you say is reverting Shauna would be second dinner, keeping it Cosmo.
Yes, that would be
All right.
keeping it very Cosmo.
Well, hopefully they will, and you'll get a nice surprise on Thursday. So we'll
We'll
pick it
see.
up from there. All right. Well, thank you for listening as always, and we'll catch you next time on another wonderful episode of Born to Be Cosmo. Have a good night, everyone.
Keep it Cosmo.
Keep it Cosmo.
Enough said, bub.